Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Captain's Table. I am your host, Captain B-Nard, and topic of discussion today is going to be a review and reflection of the YCL Wi-Fi. So, in case you guys missed my last battle video, the YCL Wi-Fi is over for the Philadelphia Pidgeys at this point. So, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing we always do, which is, of course, going to be a recap of the season. We're going to talk about our weekly games, team stats, just general overall comments about the season of the league, and of course, looking forward to the future of the channel. So, having said all that, we're just going to go ahead and dive right into it. So, as you can see by the beautiful low quality thumbnail here, we did finish as a semifinalist here in the YCL Wi-Fi with an 8-3 record. So I was very pleased with that. That was actually I believe the second best record I've ever had in a draft league, only second to the draft league that I actually won a couple of years back. So I was very happy with that result. Um, I suppose we'll start off by kind of going through our weekly games, and then we'll get into some team stats and that sort of thing. So, for those of you who've been following the Philadelphia Pidgeys here in the YCL Wi-Fi Draft League, you might remember or already know this, but we actually ended up picking up victories in our first 3 weeks of the league via forfeit. So this was a very odd way to start the season off. Nothing like this has ever happened before to me. So I was not quite sure what to make of it at first. Obviously, the knee-jerk reaction is to be very happy with that, which I was, for the most part. So, for one reason or another, essentially all three of those games didn't occur because our opponents didn't show for the games. And I believe in all three instances, there were at least one, if not two, reschedule attempts made. So, in other words, our opponent didn't show up once, and then we gave a reschedule, and then our opponents didn't show up again. And then at that point, we just kind of went ahead and took the forfeit victory. So, I will say a couple of things about that. So, I want to say first and foremost that I am generally not a huge fan of taking a forfeit victory. It's not something that I prefer, and it's not something that I want to happen. So, well, obviously taking a free win is good, especially when you're trying to qualify for the playoffs. Um, it's not good for a couple of reasons. So, one is it doesn't allow me to create content for you guys, which is really the main goal here. Is in joining these draft leagues is to create good content and have fun. And obviously, I'm not doing either one of those things if I'm taking forfeit victories. Having said that, I also don't believe in a player jerking their opponent around, in the sense that if you show up to a game and your opponent can't make it for whatever reason or ghosts you for whatever reason, it's not right for them to keep doing that to you, because you're taking time out of your schedule, out of your day to show up for a game. And I believe I may have mentioned this before, but I don't have a ton of free time. I do Pokemon and I do YouTube because I enjoy it and it's fun. But at the same time, I don't have a lot of free time to dedicate to it. So if I'm getting uh, constantly rescheduled for battles, that is definitely no bueno for me, because I have a limited amount of time that I can apply toward gaming in the first place. Um, so yeah, I have mixed feelings about the forfeit wins, because, in like I said, in one way, it it sucks because I do want to create content for you guys, and I also want to feel the team out, which is another thing I'll get to in a second. But the other thing is, at the same time, all of these forfeit wins were justified. I did give all of my opponents ample uh, opportunity to have the game with me, and even an opportunity to reschedule the game. So I definitely feel that these forfeit wins were justified on my part. And I don't hold any ill will toward any of my opponents. I understand life happens and things happen. Um, and Pokemon is definitely going to take a backseat to real life, as it should. And, I do commend those players for doing the right thing in those situations, and not making a big deal about it, as unfortunately other players in other leagues past have. So the other kind of disadvantage about this, though, is that with all of those forfeit victories early in the season, it really didn't give me any chance to troubleshoot the team, as far as trying to figure out what I could do to maybe change up my strategy early, or maybe make some transactions to change the team up a little bit to maybe fix some weaknesses that the team had. And I think that kind of came back to hurt me a little bit later on in the season. So, following those three forfeit victories, we went to week four, which was a game we actually lost to a player who was a former multiple time draft league champion. And so, yeah, that week was kind of brutal. We were kind of outmatched on paper, and we didn't really have the practice with the team from the first few weeks, so there wasn't a lot we could do in that week. It just kind of was what it was. He did play very well and prep very well for our team because we had faced him and defeated him in a prior draft league, and he was definitely out for revenge in that game, and he definitely got it. So that was that week, and then that took us to week five, which was our only other loss in the regular season. And that was to the team that would eventually end up becoming undefeated, and the team that would eventually knock us out of the playoffs in the semifinals as well. And so that game actually occurred late, I believe. So the thing was, unfortunately, as far as trying to patch the team and troubleshoot it and make transactions, because that week five game was getting occurring on an extension, we really had nothing to go off of because, as I probably hadn't mentioned before, but I should mention now, the cutoff for making any kind of transactions or changes to your team was week five, at the end of week five, so effective week six, because it was only a 9 week regular season. So, in other words, because we were running behind because of a reschedule on our week five game, and because we had three forfeit victories in the first 3 weeks of the league, we really had no opportunity to troubleshoot our team whatsoever. So this is actually the first time ever that the initial draft that I had actually ended up being my team for the entire season. So, and don't get me wrong, I wasn't necessarily unhappy with that, but I will say that we were kind of put in a position where we didn't really have an opportunity to try and tweak the team at all, which was what it was. We still did very well with it, but yeah, unfortunately, we ended up losing that week five game as well. In not a super close game, but not, I guess, a complete blowout either. In that game, I will say I feel like I prepped poorly for that game, even though, again, I feel like it was another match that was just pretty rough on paper for us. And, we were definitely fighting an uphill battle the entire time. So at that point, we then proceeded to go on quite the tear, actually, beginning in week six. We ended up winning that game and just barely. And as the weeks went on in this, what would end up being a 5 game win streak, our wins kind of got progressively more impressive weeks six, seven, eight, and nine. So we were barely eking out victories in those first couple weeks six and seven, and then in eight and nine, we ended up with a little more convincing performances. So that was when the team really kind of started to shine. I got comfortable with it. I kind of got into the fact that there weren't going to be any more changes made to the team, so I could just strategize as best I could with the team that I had, and so it worked out pretty well. So we ended the regular season with a 7-2 record, which I believe I said this already was actually the best record for a regular season that I've ever had. So I was very happy about that. The team really pulled through for me, especially in the latter half of the season, to make that happen. So that's going to bring us to the playoffs. So our first playoff match then was obviously the quarterfinals, which was just a few weeks ago. We ended up winning that game. Obviously, it was a very tight game. This was a pretty even match on paper, and we were in a pretty domineering position most of the game. It was a good performance from us, but unfortunately, as was the case in several of our matches this season, that 20-minute timer on Sword and Shield is just a killer, and that ended up finishing off a lot of our games. Not much we can do about that, unfortunately, but it just kind of is what it is. We try to work with it and play as quickly and as best we can. So we barely made it through the quarterfinals with a tight victory, which brought us to the semifinals, which is, of course, at this point, as you all know, we ended up not being able to get the job done in that rematch against our Week 5 opponent and that undefeated team. And once again, the teams hadn't changed since that Week 5 game, neither of our teams. So, again, just a really difficult match for us on paper. They have just a ton of offensive threats that just really match up very well against our team. And I think, prep a lot better for this game. And it was, I believe, a closer game. All in all, I think the score was about the same, if not a little worse. But I think that we definitely put on a better showing, and we were in a better position. We were kind of in the first game with this team. We were kind of on the defensive pretty much the entire game, and then just time ran out when we were pretty much down and out anyway. And then in this time around, we actually were in a commanding position at a couple instances in the game, but unfortunately, we just couldn't overcome the core that they had. The strategy and just the offensive pressure that the team could apply was just a little too much for us. So we ended up not being able to get the job done and getting eliminated in the semifinals. So that leaves us, as I mentioned before, with an 8-3 record. But as I said, I was incredibly proud of getting that record, and I was incredibly proud of making it to the semifinals, and very incredibly proud of the team as well. So, yeah, I think that is actually going to bring us to the actual team itself. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at that. So there it is. So as I mentioned, the Philadelphia Pidgeys here in the YCL Wi-Fi did not change at all throughout the entire YCL Wi-Fi. So this was the first draft league that I've ever been in that I made no transactions throughout the entire season, and I did mention why just a moment ago. So I have the KDR for all of the Pokemon on the team here up on the screen. So the first number is going to be the amount of games that I brought the Pokemon to. The second number is going to be the amount of knockouts that they scored throughout the entire season, and the third number is going to be the amount of times they were knocked out. So as you can see, based on looking at this, and I just kind of listed the team off in the order from top to bottom the way that I drafted it initially. As you can see, Corviknight and Goodra, that were my first two draft picks, they ended up making the most appearances. So even though the numbers are going to be a little deceptive here because of all those forfeits we had in the beginning of the league, so essentially we only ended up playing 8 games this season. So technically we had 11 rounds with the main season and the playoffs, but we only ended up playing 8 games. So 7 of those games we brought Corviknight and Goodra. Those were our top 2 picks. As you guys know, Goodra is a staple of all of my Philadelphia Pidgeys teams in every draft league I join. So, yeah, they were the cornerstones of the team, really. After that, it kind of filters down to we had 5 appearances by Blastoise, Lycanroc Dusk form, and Alolan Ninetales. So in a little more than half of our games, we ended up bringing those guys. Then we had, in exactly half of our games, brought Type Null, Hitmonlee, Cresselia, and Sandaconda. And then in just 3 games, we ended up bringing Galvantula. So there's a lot of differences that you might notice in this team as to every other team that I've drafted here in any draft league. And that is that every single Pokemon that I drafted came to at least 3 games, and most of them came to at least 4 games. So that's pretty incredible to me, and that's exactly what I wanted out of drafting this team. Because at the end of the day, normally in a draft league, what you have is you have a couple of Pokemon that are going to come every week. Then you have a handful of Pokemon that are going to come pretty much every week. Then you have a handful of Pokemon that are going to come a little bit. And then you have a handful of Pokemon, or a couple of Pokemon, I should say, that are never going to come. So I was very happy with the fact that I was able to put together a team that was top to bottom, what I feel the most solid team looking back that I've ever put together in a draft league, where every Pokemon was a viable bring every single week. And that was really what my goal was of building this team. And that's why I was so happy with how it came together. And the proof was in the pudding, in the fact that I was able to bring every Pokemon so many times to battle. So that was by design, and I think that that definitely gave me an edge. I know a couple of coaches told me that I defeated, that they were very thrown off in prep and they really didn't know what to do, and that they ended up prepping for stuff I didn't even bring. And that actually ended up being a huge advantage for me in this season because of that just solid top to bottom lineup. I mean, you look at this lineup, there is not one weak link on this team, and there's not one Pokemon that is just, like a throwaway or just filling the gap. And again, that's exactly what I wanted. That was by design, and I think that's why I was very happy with the way that this team performed overall. So I will say a couple of highlights and lowlights of this team. The Pokemon I would say that I drafted that was kind of the sleeper pick that impressed me the most, I am going to say was actually Type Null. So I mentioned this before, I believe in the initial draft analysis video when I drafted Type Null. Type Null is a Pokemon that I've been wanting to draft for a very long time, and I was happy that I was able to grab it this draft league. And it impressed me so much, honestly. I was so happy with having this thing on my team. It put in so much work in several games. I brought it to half of my games, and it is just an absolute tank, but it can also hit a lot harder than people think it can hit. So I was very happy with the performance of Type Null. It definitely surpassed my expectations, and I was very happy with it, with how it turned out. Now, on the flip side, I will say there's a Pokemon that I was actually kind of disappointed in its performance this season of Draft League, and that is going to have to be Blastoise, actually. So, Blastoise, as you can see, I brought to 5 games and did not pick up a single kill with this thing. Now, that's disappointing, more so than other Pokemon that I have on the team that didn't pick up any kills. So as you notice, obviously, I brought Corviknight to 7 out of 8 games, did not get a single kill with that. Brought Sandaconda to 4 out of 8 games, didn't get a single kill with that. But the thing is, those Pokemon are more utility, more pivot. Blastoise is a Pokemon that I brought and I drafted because I wanted to try and sweep with it. I wanted to get the Shell Smash sweeps going, as Blastoise got Shell Smash here in Generation 8 in Sword and Shield as a move. So I was actually pretty disappointed with the fact that I was not able to get that going at all with Blastoise. I was not able to get a single kill with Blastoise. Now, looking back on it, I think the main reason for that is that it's just too obvious. I think people just see it coming a mile away, the Shell Smash set, and they're able to adjust for it and prep for it. And yeah, I don't know. I actually did manage to set up a Shell Smash a couple of times throughout the season, but unfortunately, I was not able to get on a roll and actually win the game or even knock out a single Pokemon with it. So yeah, I was kind of disappointed that. I mean, maybe I could have played it better. Maybe it's partially my fault for doing it, but um, yeah, that was just a Pokemon that didn't really pan out as good as I wanted it to, as opposed to Type Null, which just worked out way better than I thought it would. So, but yeah, regardless of that, I'm still very happy with the performance of the team overall. I'm very happy with the fact that I was able to get to the semifinals. And yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have to say about the team itself. Again, by design, and that every Pokemon was a viable bring every week, and just I think it did make the season, uh, all in all, quite a lot of fun. All right, so that is going to bring us to the closing remarks. So I will say some general comments as far as the season goes as a whole. Positive things, most things I would say were positive. So I did have a lot of fun this season. I had a lot more fun this season of Draft League than I did the last two. Um, Part of that could have been because I was doing a lot more winning this season than the last two. But I think part of it is just it was a more friendly environment, I believe, in this draft league, especially compared to the last one I joined. And yeah, people were a little more easygoing, actually, maybe even too easygoing, which might have led to a lot of the scheduling conflicts I had, which is kind of the one negative. Once again, is that I believe in every single week of the regular season of the draft, except the final week, week 9, I had to deal with either a reschedule or a postpone or both. So, unfortunately, as I used to complain about that being a thing in the draft league I was in prior to this one. This one actually was worse as far as reschedules and postponements and all that kind of stuff. And I think that might have fed to the easygoing nature of this league, is that it might have been just a little too easygoing to the point that people are like, whatever, as far as scheduling goes. Um, but again, I get it. Life happens, things happen. Unfortunately, I don't feel like that should be every player every week. And like I said, in every single week, I believe it was, except for week 9 when it didn't matter because I was already qualified for the playoffs at that point. That was the only game I think in the regular season that actually went off without a hitch. And then in the playoffs, the semifinal match was the only one that went off without a hitch. So I believe, yeah, so that's 2 out of 11 rounds, actually, that we had no scheduling issues with our opponent. So no needing an extension, no needing to reschedule, no getting ghosted, no getting bailed on. Two out of 11. So that's not great. But like I said, I take it a little more in stride, I think, because the players who in the beginning of the season really couldn't help it. They did the right thing and they did forfeit after a few tries to schedule the game. And like I said, maybe I'm just in a little bit better of spirits about it because we did end up doing so well this season. Um, but yeah, that was definitely kind of a double-edged sword for us. So yeah, overall, I really have mostly positive feelings and mostly nothing negative to say about this draft league. I think it was a good way to kind of redeem myself and bounce back for past draft league faux pas, especially the last one we were in prior to this. Which things really didn't go our way. Not only that, there was also a lot of other um, dubious stuff afoot. So definitely happy that this one didn't turn out that way, and definitely happy that despite having those scheduling mishaps this season as well, it still ended up being fun, still ended up being enjoyable, and we still ended up doing very well, and hopefully still ended up creating some good content for you guys to view. And I think. When we went on that 5 game win streak toward the end of the season, the latter half of the season, I should say, all of those games were very good, and I was happy with the quality of content that we were able to turn out. So yeah, so I think that pretty much wraps it as far as talking about the YCL Wi-Fi. All in all, it was a good season, a very good season, and yeah, happy to have participated in it. So. I guess that brings us to looking toward the future. So, as you guys all probably know at this point, Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl are now out. They are now available. I did pick up a copy on opening day, and I am currently playing through the story mode of that game. Having said that, that put me in a little bit of a conundrum, and let me explain because I kind of think I put myself in this conundrum by not doing math very well. So, what I actually did is I went ahead and made one final Wi-Fi battle team for Sword and Shield because I was anticipating two things. I was anticipating that the YCL Wi-Fi would end a little bit sooner than it did, and I was also anticipating that BDSP would be released a little bit later than it was. So that is why I went ahead and made that final Wi-Fi battle team for Sword and Shield few weeks ago, actually, at this point. And so, yeah, I'm kind of in a position where I don't want to have it been a waste for me to make that team. So what I'm going to do while I'm kind of playing through the BDSP story mode is I'm going to have a few more Wi-Fi battles with that team on Sword and Shield, just so it wasn't a waste for me to make that team. And then at that point, we're going to kind of retire Sword and Shield here and move on to Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl Wi-Fi battles. So that's kind of the game plan here. So I will be having just a few more Sword and Shield Wi-Fi battles for you guys coming up very shortly. And yeah, then we will go from there. So I guess that's pretty much it. I do just also want to say a thank you to all of you guys who watched and supported and cheered for the Philadelphia Pidgeys throughout the YCL Wi-Fi, and continue to watch and support the content here on the YouTube channel. I do really appreciate it, because at the end of the day, like I said, I am a content creator for fun and also to try and entertain whoever might be watching. So if I can accomplish those two things, then I think I'm doing okay. So, yeah, that is pretty much it. So, thanks for watching again, everybody. Hope you all enjoyed. Please hit that like button, subscribe, share the video, comment if you did enjoy, and stay tuned for more new videos in the future. As I said, we're going to be doing just a few more Sword and Shield Wi-Fi battles before calling it a day on that, and then moving to Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. So stay tuned for all that. That's it, and we'll see you next time.